Hey everyone, in today's episode I'll discuss the best Sydney suburbs for investment. Look, it's a hard one because Sydney's so expensive, but I'm going to go basically through each price point. So in today's video I'll go through a few things. First of all, what makes a good suburb in Sydney for investment. Second of all, where these predominantly located. Thirdly, the numbers behind good suburbs, and then finally the suburbs themselves. Let's get into it. So what makes a good suburb in Sydney? Number one and number two, strong demographics and low consistent supply. So demographics drive markets. If people can afford more, they can generally pay more for property. Low supply is good, especially consistent, because you have a high demographic of person wanting to buy only a couple of properties in a suburb. Therefore, you don't have much they can choose from, which therefore means then they have to all fight over and prices go up. Proximity to water and CBD play a large part. And the reason for that is people generally like going to work, which are around CBD areas, and going to the beach and the harbour. Really important in Sydney and popular. Not necessarily the harbour, but it could be Port Hacking, the harbour, Pittwater, Georges River, or Botany Bay. They like the water in Sydney, a lot of people. And the advantage areas are all around the water too. Business and employment hubs and lifestyle triangle are all important. Generally, people live where all the jobs are and the money is. So definitely consider that too. And lifestyle triangle is good because people don't like commuting in Sydney. It's not something wealthy people like doing. Proximity to prestigious schools and suburbs. People who like their kids going to the good schools generally like living in wealthy areas where other people live. It's an unfortunate reality, but it's the truth. Council restrictions and zoning. So certain areas as well are development pro, others aren't. Less supply means less product in the future, but sometimes it's okay with higher zoning if it means you have a detached home in the area, because it becomes very expensive because of the price in the suburbs. So definitely consider that too. Where are these predominantly located? Look, the best areas to buy in Sydney without a doubt are the eastern suburbs, lower North Shore and inner west. As you can see, this is Bronte, a photo overhead of Bronte in the background. There are also some in St George / the Bayside, Northern Beaches, Upper North Shore and Sutherland Shire, but it's a few, it's not all. You can probably include Canterbury in there, or the old Canterbury, it's called Canterbury Bankstown now, but in the old Canterbury City Council area as well, which I will get into. Look, the numbers behind these good suburbs, it's similar to Melbourne, is what you're looking for is a good total return. So that's your 30-year capital growth plus your gross rental yield. Look, I ideally aim for 12% minimum, ideally above 13%, and that's because your internal rate of return's higher when that number is high, especially if your capital growth component is high over the long term. For those that don't know why that is, look at my Melbourne video. I explain that in detail as to why that is, but basically your rental yield over the long term goes down, but your capital growth doesn't, and it's because rental growth will always do less than capital growth, hence you have an inverse relationship. So higher capital growth in percent of your total return will always lead to a high internal rate of return over the long term. That's why. Let's get into some suburbs anyway, and I'm going to start with under $1.5 million. It's a hard point to do in Sydney because there's barely a thing that's good under $1.5 million, but the closest thing I could find, and I am a Bulldogs fan, so don't hate me everyone for doing this, but the suburb is Belmore. Look, it's only about 12 or 13 k's from the CBD, Belmore, but it's actually quite a decent area. It's not too far from jobs. So obviously Burwood has some jobs. It's not far from the city either. You can get there pretty quickly, generally in about half an hour. That's obviously some job hubs. Hurstville has some jobs too. It's not too bad to drive to Ryde. It's probably about 40 minutes in the long term. Sydney Olympic Park's there too. Lidcombe as well is not far. If you want to go to Parramatta as well, it's probably about 45 minutes as well. Not too bad. It might sound bad for someone from Adelaide, but for Sydney, that's not too bad. But also, it's going to be a part of the metro line. So I think a Belmore trip to the CBD is only going to be about 18 or 20 minutes once this is in. So, I mean, it's going to be incredible. So you'll get people that will happily have high incomes that will start living here. And, I mean, the demand for the suburbs as well, because of this actual metro line going in, will go up, especially from developers too, because land will become very scarce because you're going to be allowed to build much higher density in Belmore as a suburb. So that's another reason. Nearby too, I did mention the old Canterbury Council region, under 1.7 million, a suburb of Canterbury. Now, Canterbury is a very small suburb. There is quite a few units around the actual train line, but there is a pocket there, particularly near Ashbury and just sort of on the Earlwood side of Canterbury too, that actually does have, I mean, like really, really good capital growth over the long term, nearly 9% to be exact. Belmore has done about 8.5 to about 9. Some of the better streets do above 9. But, you know, you'll pick these properties up for like 1.7 million or sometimes even less here on really good blocks of land, like I mean 400 to 500 metres square generally, and they're very well constructed. You probably even get 3.5% yield on some of these, which is good for Sydney. And really, really good. And look, this is just a suburb that's truly gentrifying. And this is just an article again off Domain. It just says Canterbury, the Battler suburb, luring Sydney's inner west trendy. So you're starting to get your sort of Newtown and more kind of people that are sort of moving out here. And it's pushing that median income up, and it's quite good in terms of schools as well. You're not overly far from like Newington. Canterbury boys and Canterbury girls are decent schools too. You're pretty close as well to, I mean, Meriden. You're close to PLC. You're close to, I mean, Trinity Grammar as well. That's literally just up the road. So you do have some decent schools around here as well. So definitely consider Canterbury when it comes to under $1.7 million for Sydney. Let's get into under 2 million, and I still find it crazy that it is priced at this, and that suburb is Leichhardt. Look, Leichhardt really is very, very, very good suburb. It's, I mean, like 6-7 k's from the CBD, right next to some really expensive suburbs like Lilyfield and Haberfield. And I mean, you still have detached homes there for like under $2 million, which is incredible because, I mean, you're never going to get that anywhere else other than probably somewhere like Leichhardt in Sydney, literally that close to Sydney, and you got a really high median income there too. So this is just off census in 2021. Mind you, this would have gone up since then. So you'll just see the personal, family, and weekly. They're like, I mean, 50, like more than actually, it's actually more than 50%, in some cases 100% more than, roughly should I say, than the New South Wales average and the national average as well. So just incredible numbers here. And that's only going to push up the suburb median over the long term. Definitely a suburb to consider. Look, Leichhardt, you'd get like 9.5 to 10% capital growth there, literally. Not only that too, you'll get that growth as well. But I mean, if you know what to buy, you get 3.5% yield. I've even found some with 4 sometimes if you really know what to buy. Even if you're talking like 3.3 to 3.5% yield in Leichhardt, that's pretty incredible considering the suburb and the price point. It's very hard to get that kind of yield in a suburb that's, I mean, nearly $2 million. So definitely some good numbers there behind Leichhardt. Definitely consider that for under $2 million in Sydney. Let's get into under 2.5 mil. And the suburb we're going to get into is probably unknown by most people. That suburb is Pagewood. So for those that don't know where Pagewood is it's basically right kind of between sort of Kingsford, Randwick and East Lakes. You can see just an overhead here. That's obviously East Lakes Golf Course, but it's kind of a suburb that's, I mean, like it's right next to Daceyville as well, but like it's, I mean, an old kind of traditional sort of say working class suburb of the eastern suburbs. Look, it hasn't been working class for about 10 or 15 years now, but I mean, you still pick it up for under 2.5 mil there. And I mean, the location is exceptional. That's the reason it's such a good suburb to buy for that. So you can see here, it's right near Maroubra Beach, near Coogee, close to Randwick, right near the airport too, and near the kind of like obviously Bondi Junction, CBD and Botany job hubs. Really close to all of them. I guess you could include Sydney Airport as well as a job hub as well. Mascot also does have quite a few businesses, so quite close to there as well. I mean, like a 5-minute bus ride to there. So really good location. It's actually got quite good transport as well. The buses run everywhere from Pagewood because all your buses that go basically to Botany, the airport, the eastern suburbs, I mean the lower especially, run pretty much through Pagewood. So a good area. I mean, you're not going to go wrong in the eastern suburbs peninsula in Sydney. It's such a good area to buy. All the money's there. Yeah, such a good suburb. If you have 2.5 million and you want to buy in Sydney, you can still get low 3s yield if you really know what to get as well. You're going to get like 9.5% to 10% capital growth here on average. So really good suburb to consider if you've got that kind of $2.5 million budget. Look, under 3 mil is interesting because this suburb I find almost unbelievable that it's still under $3 million because it's about 4 k's from the CBD and it's like literally a waterfront suburb of the harbour as well. And that suburb is Neutral Bay. And it's just recently actually popped down in the sort of Sydney stabilisation phase of the market. And that suburb, Neutral Bay, is just incredible. Like it's, I mean, right next to Mossman, Cremorne, Carraba Point, really expensive suburbs, and right near the North Sydney Job Hub and Chatswood Job Hub. So you can't go wrong there. And I mean, literally, it is beautiful. You have a lot of the houses here have views of the harbour like this in the Harbour Bridge down the streets. And I mean, it's an old money suburb, so a lot of the traditional old school money is in Neutral Bay in Sydney. So you have a lot of these old heritage listed homes like you can see here, but it's amongst all the jobs. So just on the right hand side here, you'll see that's your Sydney kind of job hubs. And if you look at St Leonard's, if you kind of draw a line maybe about 2k southeast of St Leonard's, that's where Neutral Bay is. And it's right near literally all the main jobs. It's right in the middle of all of them. And it's a very, very, very wealthy suburb. A lot of low mortgages, and a lot of people here own their homes completely outright, particularly houses, close to 40%. So, I mean, you can't go wrong. I find it incredible that it's only like literally buying it under 3 mil. Like that is a good buy, and you can get, I mean, like 3% yield, and this suburb does like nearly 10% long-term growth. So you got the money, definitely something to consider. Definitely reach out, because I'm telling you, this will not last when that market picks up. It'll keep going up the way it always does. Let's get it under 3.5 million, and that suburb I'm going to mention is in, I mean, the prime pocket of the eastern suburbs, and that suburb is Waverley. Look, I've got a photo here, and it might turn a few people off, but for the people that know the area, it's probably most famous for its actual cemetery, the Waverley Cemetery. It is on the Bondi to Bronte Walk. It is beautiful. You can see the background here. I mean, can't go wrong here. Great suburb. And look, the thing about Waverley is it's a very wealthy suburb, also an old money suburb. It's an old money suburb. It's also a new money suburb, because a lot of, I mean, not just normal money, it's like very expensive normal money is going into Waverley. And I mean, you're not going to go wrong here. Like, it is one of the Sydney's cheapest suburbs in its premier location. So I'm just pointing out where it is here. You can see right next to Bronte, which is like $5 million, right next to Bondi, which is also like 5 mil. Queen's Park's nearby, which is like 4 mil as well. Bondi Junction as well, which is also 4 mil. That's where it is. It's basically straight down the Waverley Hill is Bronte. So it's very close, and it's very close to all the jobs in Bondi Junction, the city, and Randwick as well. So the Children's Hospital, for example, is in Randwick, so employs a lot of wealthy people that live in Waverley as well. So definitely one to consider if you've got that $3.5 million budget. Let's go on to 4 million. And again, this is another one that I find surprising. It's actually in the stabilisation phase, actually popped down a little bit. It was right up over 4 mil for a little while, but it is actually around 4 mil, even a touch under. And that suburb is Cremorne in the lower North Shore. Now, I didn't mention Neutral Bay, which I would argue is probably even a little bit of a better investment suburb than Cremorne. But Cremorne has done also like nearly 10% growth over the long term, right? About 9.7 to be exact. But that's an average. But anyway, like the reason why Cremorne is a little bit more expensive is because you've got quite a few more waterfronts at front middle harbour. But you know, really good suburb. You can't really go wrong buying here. Like, you're not going to lose money long term. And I mean, like, it is such a good suburb to buy. I mean, this is just an article again off the Financial Review. The Blue Ribbon suburb that people don't really know about, and it's a good way to describe it. It is one of Sydney's best suburbs. You can't really go wrong buying there. It's only about 5 or 6 k's from the CBD. And it's near, like, Mossman has a lot of jobs, North Sydney, St Leonard's. I mean, Chatswood, the city's not far either. Like, it's close to all of them. You've got express buses that run there from close to the Spit Junction and along sort of Military Road especially. And yeah, you're not going to go wrong there. Like, it's a beautiful and very, very good suburb. So definitely consider Cremorne if you've got $4 million or so to buy. Look, let's go to any budget, and I'm not going to go your absolute top end. I could say Bellevue Hill, I could say Point Piper, I could say Vaucluse, I could say anything like that. But I'm actually mentioning a suburb that's, I mean, probably closer to the $4.5 to $5 million range, and that suburb is North Bondi. And do we need to debate this, really? Like, this is just an overhead of Ben Buckler, so the North Bondi headland. You're not going to get much better photo in the world than that, I mean. Like, it's such a nice area and such a good suburb to buy in. But do we really need any debate at all over anything? Because, like, look at just its location. It's, I mean, right next to Bondi, the world famous Bondi Beach, right next to Dover, right next to Bellevue Hill, right next to, I mean, Rose Bay. It's probably your best located suburb in probably the country. You've got very high median income. You've got no supply whatsoever on the market. Everyone wealthy wants to live there. And it's only $4.5 million. And I know it sounds ridiculous to most people, but when you've got billionaires that want to buy in a suburb, a billionaire has $1,000 million. $4.5 million is nothing for a billionaire. It's literally like less than 1% of their net worth. So that's the reason why it's such a good suburb to buy in if you have that kind of money or any budget. Like, you're not going to go wrong. Don't get me wrong, if you're on Ben Buckler Headland, you're not paying $4.5 million. You're probably paying 15. But you know, genuinely a really good house you can get for $4.5 to $5 million in Bondi that will do literally 10% long term, sometimes even more, sometimes up to even 11. And if you really know what to do, you may, and you don't mind doing a little reno, you might even get maybe 3 to 3.3% yield. So some of those houses rent for more than $2,000 a week. So don't be surprised if you get that. Some rent for $3,000 even. So absolute best suburb you can buy if budget isn't your concern. But anyway, we're getting to the end of this video. Please reach out if this interests you at all. I know a lot of Sydney siders do struggle with their budgets, but I can definitely help you for the budgets that I've mentioned here. You do need 1.5 mil plus, but really, really good suburbs to consider. But I thank everyone for watching. Please subscribe and cheers. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks again, guys.